Hi, I'm Judith Royal, archetypal astrologer, and I just had to weigh in again in May 10th of 2020, with your forecast because so many things are happening in May, many clusters as we're moving a lot of energy into the sign of Gemini, and that's Gemini air, and that is also the zodiac sign of communications. So last week, as I was sitting in stillness and just thinking about the Mother's Day energy to come and asking for some guidance about how to see it, because of course, remember, we are now in the time, actually an age of healed perception. And for so many of us, a healed perception of our mother is very, very freeing. I'm very blessed that I have had that in my life. And my thoughts then drifted to the love that has been there between me and my mother, and also my grandmother, Maggie. I lived in the South growing up, and so in the South, we don't call her Maggie, of course, or even grandmother, but she was known as Mama Goodwin, and she was a force to be reckoned with. She was an Aries and very feisty, especially when it came to politics. And I guess I'm thinking of her more because we're now 6 months away from our presidential election. And when I was very young, my grandmother used to come get me to go with her to pass out political flyers door to door. I remember well her I Like Ike button that she wore and was such a believer in Eisenhower. And I was thinking about how that was the last time that we had a presidential election in which the popular vote literally drafted in the man that the people wanted. He had no aspirations to be president and had refused the request to be nominated until the very last moment when the popular noise about the corrupt practices of the sitting president, Taft, that's what really motivated him to stand up and be counted and, of course, elected as President Eisenhower. So while I was thinking of Maggie and her very strong voice for freedom, I thought about the other mother that we all share in America, the mother of exiles, or otherwise known as the Statue of Liberty. It was a woman, Emma Lazarus, who wrote the poem with the famous lines that are now inscribed on the pedestal that the Statue of Liberty stands on. Her words seem very poignant to me today, perhaps because still lingering with me is the story of a family of 4 who are camped or were camped at the border of America from Mexico, and they had a tent and only 2 blankets that stood between them and the frostbite and the freezing weather. And that is still happening right now as I'm talking to you. So her lines that are so beautiful are that here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. Further in the poem, she says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me, I lift my lamp beside the golden door. In addition to being a brilliant poet, Emma Lazarus was also an activist, a political activist for Jewish causes. I love it for, well, yes, the power of the pen, but the power of the voice for freedom, the power of our voices, period, as wonderful catalysts to be a hero, a heroine, and certainly I think she was, for America. With the coronavirus pandemic, there are heroes and heroines, there are healthcare workers and ordinary folk just like you and me, emerging in heroic acts every single day. And I want us to count as miracles even the one small thing that each of us might do as we acknowledge the power of our word, the power of a true word. And as Venus in Gemini is joined by Mercury in Gemini, and then on May the 20th, the Sun moves into Gemini, we have a cluster of inspiration on a daily basis that will invite us to make a difference by being, or rather giving voice to an action to the hero, the heroine within all of us. Venus and Mercury together are beautiful words. It is the exact resonance of poetry and metaphor. They have their annual meetup. They do this only once a year. And this year it is on May 22nd, the same day of the new moon in Gemini. I feel like saying, and that's not all, folks. Actually, I will say that. That's not all, folks, because on May the 24th, the moon, still in Gemini, will conjunct Mercury. They will meet up. And so now the desire in your heart, the juiciness of your emotions, your feelings, join with your words, your thoughts, your ideas, and you are like a walking think tank for creativity and for definitely thinking outside the box. You and I can be the cause of joy, of extending joy. In fact, one of the wonderful slogans I remember in the Me Too movement was, joy is an act of resistance. I even bought that t-shirt, I'll confess. And how can we be the cause of joy every day in our lives? Easy. Being in love is the cause of joy. And with 3 planets now retrograde by the end of the week of May 11th, and by the way, we are on our way to 5 planets retrograde this summer, which is the time for that kind of focused standstill of energy in which there is stillness, and we need to rest from all the busy doingness in the world and in our thoughts as well, and just be. So retrograde is a time for rethinking, for renewing your faith, for rediscovering your courage, your heroic self on this incredible journey. And so I was thinking, what would the hero, with all this Gemini energy, this out-of-the-blocks kind of thinking, what would be an archetypal example of that? And I thought of the story of David and Goliath. I think they are on the world stage now in this other side of the big shift, the avalanching energy of change. For example, let's think about Goliath. He was sort of a symbol of an overblown, kind of grandiose and not kind use of power. He wielded his power as if it were a weapon. Goliath was sort of a big, blustery bully, right? Who was setting about to overtake David, a mere mortal man and a lot smaller in stature. But he was a man of known integrity. And so right at the moment that was likely to be his doom, David changed the rules. David is the archetypal energy we have now with Uranus, the god of lightning, in the sign of Taurus. That imprisoned lightning that the torch of the Statue of Liberty is described as. Here with David, it is running free, such that something as small as a slingshot brings down the giant. And of course, part of the so-called moral there, not that it has to have one, but the energy there is not so much about the slingshot, but about the thought that David had to use it, to pick something quite different and seemingly ineffective to bring down a big, grandiose bully. Now, the lightning bolts of Uranus are the urge, the wake-up call for rebellion. But because he is now, and for the next 7 years, in the earthy sign of Taurus, the rebellion comes in the area of our resources, also inner resources as people, individuals, and the resources of our country, the land we live in. But his biggest inspiration and the way he would like to give us a sudden epiphany is to re-look at our values. What do we value? Really, what do we value and why? Sudden, out of the blue changes like the coronavirus pandemic changed our values almost overnight when it comes to healthcare. The almost endless political bantering, using the health of Americans as the ping pong ball, those arguments have been transcended by the mother of necessity. I guarantee that there is a shift for all of us as citizens in a global village to move into the Aquarian energy of giving solid footing to taking action on humanitarian goals. Think of all those young protesters we've had all around the world using technology like WhatsApp and so forth to communicate with one another and share goals and slogans, etc., mainly with the humanitarian goal of economic equality. I'm reminded of a documentary I watched a while back, and it was an interview of a woman who talks to angels. And let's not make her all that special. We can all talk to angels. But she has made it her conscious daily choice. And one of the things she quoted the angels as saying is that America, the United States, is the saving grace for our world. Now that hit me as a little bit of a surprise since we seem to be in such a mess here. However, they weren't saying that because America is a democracy. She was saying that because America is a melting pot, that we have a population of immigrants from most of the countries and continents in the world, and that for most of us, our ancestors did not have their roots in American soil. In fact, they are people who uprooted their own selves to find new opportunities here. Some came willingly, some came hopefully, some were dragged or pirated, exiled in some of the most cruel ways possible. But nevertheless, we are a country of technicolor faces and unwitting pioneers, and we are accustomed to change and, yes, even chaos as a way of life. America became great for those very reasons. We have a heritage of desperation, of people like those that stand and lay now at our border, who are fleeing an oppressive situation and are desperate for freedom, as we once were, as we are now. And so, would you wonder with me, where is David? Who will break the rule that says we are to fear people who are different from ourselves? What would this look like through the vision of healed perception? We can really look at the fact that our fear of those immigrants, of our fear of anyone actually, is simply our own projection. We are accusing them or holding them at fault for the very same errors that we ourselves once made and that we hold against ourselves silently in guilt. We are one in our collective consciousness, and we know that the founding of our great America was on genocide, and that Cortez landing in the Americas for Spain brought the disease of smallpox and killed millions. We are a country who turned our mentally ill out of the community hospitals and into our streets as homeless. But the point isn't about the mistakes that we have made, but rather let's just say the truth of it and stop projecting it onto other people and situations. Then we are truly free, because unless we forgive others for making the same kinds of mistakes we ourselves have made, unless we forgive them, we can never forgive ourselves. Many people might claim that, well, I wasn't the one who did any of that, because they are in ignorance of the fact that there is no I, it is we. In truth, I have no grounds to say that, well, I would never be one to catch the coronavirus. No, now it is a collective we, and that is the real cause of joy. It is also a cause for loving one another. I know you do join me in offering kindness to those who are ragged or unwell, kindness for those who long to breathe freely, for those homeless and tempest-tossed. We can take our cue from the mother of exiles. We can hold our light high. We can shine it in a worldwide welcome. Thanks for joining me and listening. You can always reach me by email, judith@judithroyal.com. Bye for now.